What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot of volleyball to get into as the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament starts this weekend. Who are the 7 teams that will be duking it out for the NCAA Championship? And who are the teams that surprised and impressed in the conference tournaments this past weekend? UCLA, Hawaii, obviously it was no surprise. Penn State, no surprise. Ohio State, no surprise. But how about King of Tennessee wrangling the Conference of Carolinas tournament championship by defeating North Greenville in the final, or North Greenville? And how about Long Beach State winning the Big West Conference beach volleyball tournament? And UCLA just continues to dominate, beating USC and LMU. Also, we have some NCAA women's volleyball to discuss as I attended a scrimmage this past Saturday. Which one was it? You'll have to find out. Hand me a volleyball. Set the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you are listening into episode 191 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us get on into that volleyball goodness. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter, TikTok, and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use Facebook. Just type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar. And then once you see our icon, just like us and follow us on Facebook. And that's how you are following IE Sports Radio. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com. And when you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top. And if you choose to donate, donations will start out at $5 a month. This will get you a shout out from all 26 of our shows, including, and especially this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to ISRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years, and soon to be 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Losgrit, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. And with all that said and done, let us begin. So we have to start off with NCAA men's volleyball, as there were conference tournaments galore. Now, unfortunately, there were only 5 automatic qualifiers in terms of the NCAA men's volleyball. There's the Big West Conference, there's the MPSF, there's the EIVA, the MIVA, and then there's the Conference of Carolinas. There are 3 conference tournaments that unfortunately do not give out automatic qualifiers for this year. Hopefully that changes next year. And that happens to be the IVA, which is the Independent Volleyball Association. Then there's the SIAC, which I want to say that's the Southern Independent Athletic Conference. I'm not sure what the actual acronym is. If I whiffed on that, I apologize. And then there's the Northeast Conference. Those 3 conference tournaments happened, and they don't give out automatic qualifiers, but it's always fun to recap those. I actually did not make a prediction on the IVA and SIAC tournament, so yeah, I am sorry to everybody that is a SIAC or IVA volleyball fan, or that has a team that's in those conferences. I really do apologize, and it didn't really cross my mind. And I thought the NEC was an automatic qualifier, but unfortunately, it is not. So let's actually recap those conference tournaments. So we'll start off with the IVA tournament final, as Lincoln Memorial, or LMU, took on Queens in the final. Long story short, Lincoln Memorial took down the number 5 seed, and then Queens took down the number 3 seed. It was pretty much expected to be these two, but LMU was just the top dog, the dominant team, as they swept Queens 25-20, 25-21, and 25-15. Lincoln Memorial, or LMU, was led by Cole Campisano, who had 11 kills, while Matt Gentry had 10 kills, and Justin Scharfenacker had 9 kills, and Shea Spadaro had 7 kills. This is the same Lincoln Memorial that played Pepperdine in the first game of the 2023 NCAA men's volleyball season, by the way, as the Rail Splitters hit 369, which was darn right phenomenal, and they also had 9 blocks as a team compared to Queens' 7.5 blocks. Queens was led by Matthew Pilch, who had 11 kills, but that was pretty much where the buck stopped, as their next kill leader was Daniel Leitao, who had 5 kills, which is not going to get the job done. So for LMU, or Lincoln Memorial, the all-conference, or the tournament MVP was Cole Campisano, and the all-tournament team in the IVA tournament was Tate Colbaugh from LMU, Shea Spadaro from LMU, Matt Gentry from LMU, Guillermo Jordan from Queens, Matthew Pilch from Queens, Joe Nicometto from Maryville, and James Tretian. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry. James Tretian from Limestone. And on that note of mentioning Limestone, I do have some unfortunate news. Limestone is unfortunately cutting its men's volleyball program, which they are now another victim of, unfortunately, seeing its men's volleyball program getting cut, which really sucks just because we want to grow the game of NCAA men's volleyball and volleyball in general. So, it's unfortunate for Limestone, but we wish all those players nothing but the best, and hopefully they can get back on their feet. But back to the IVA conference tournament final, there was no doubt Lincoln Memorial would win. They actually entered this game on an 18-match winning streak, and they finished the season 22-4. Their only losses came at the hands of Pepperdine, UC San Diego, CSUN, and Charleston. Now, all those losses are actually pretty quality losses, with the lone exception of UC San Diego. But UC San Diego has some stud players like Ryan Kah. And then CSUN, obviously, they have some pretty good players. They drastically improved under Theo Edwards. Pepperdine, obviously, really good team from the MPSF, top 10 team. And then Charleston, very good team from the EIVA, drastically improved. They're a good team as well. So those were all quality losses, and even the UC San Diego loss was pretty good, wasn't too bad as well. Granted, most of those were in the UC San Diego loss was in 5, but most of the other 3 were in straight set sweeps. They did beat UC Santa Barbara, which was top 10 at the time. So for LMU, or Lincoln Memorial, their future is looking bright, and I hope they can continue to, keep up their strong efforts of being one of the best in terms of their small schools. Like, it's not easy going and they also went undefeated at home, which it's never easy to go undefeated at home. I mean, obviously the Rail Splitters don't play the competition like UC Irvine, Long Beach State, Hawaii, UCLA play, but it's very tough to go undefeated at home. And they, along with UCLA and BYU, also went undefeated at home. So for Lincoln Memorial to become a part of that select few, and if there's other teams that went undefeated at home this year in terms of NCAA men's volleyball, definitely do let me know. Well, at least from the Division I standpoint. But if there are other teams that went undefeated in the NCAA Division I standpoint, definitely do let me know. But for the time being, all I know is that UCLA, BYU, and Lincoln Memorial all went undefeated at home, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. So that's the first conference tournament final. Then we had the SIAC tournament final where top-seeded Edward Waters took on the reigning champion and number 2 seed Central State. Edward Waters wound up winning this final. The first set went to Edward Waters 25-17. Second set also went to EW 25-21. Third set, Central State won it 25-22. And then the fourth set, 15 ties, 4 lead changes. But Edward Waters wound up winning that fourth set 25-21 en route to winning their first ever SIAC tournament final or championship, which is darn right impressive. Edward Waters was led by Edward Evans, who had 20 kills. Evans Edward, who had 20 kills. Brian Pepin had 12 kills. Kaylin Ingram had 10 kills. As a team, Edward Waters hit 315, which is pretty good. And they also outblocked Central State 9-5.5 as a team. They also outdugged them 48-39, being led in that department by Evans, who had 15 digs, while Joan Capellan, I think that's how his name is pronounced, had 10 digs to go along with his 41 assists. If I mispronounce these names, I do apologize in advance. Central State was led by Cameron Lee, who had 14 kills. DeAaron McCraney had 11 kills, and that was pretty much their two-headed monster. Their next kill leader had 4 kills, and that was 2 players. As Central State only hit 127, and despite having more service aces and fewer service errors than Edward Waters, they just didn't really outdo him in a whole lot of categories, like in terms of hitting, digs, blocks. It just wasn't meant to be for Central State, as Edward Waters just came out on top. And for Central State, it was still a good season, but sadly, it just was not meant to be for them. But hey, what truly mattered, they tried all right. They tried. For Edward Waters, they end the season 16-4, and it's their first ever SIAC tournament championship won. So good on them for winning their first ever SIAC tournament. And honestly, they only lost 4 games, and I might as well go over their lone losses of the season. So Edward Waters' losses came at the hands of Limestone, which was to start the season. Then they also lost to Warner University of Florida. Then they also lost to Limestone again. And then they lost to Weber International University of Florida. After that, they ended the season on an 8-match winning streak. And they only lost 1 match at home. And they went a perfect 10-0 in conference, which, contrary to popular belief, they did go to a perfect 10-0. So they probably just added the conference tournament wins as well, but I digress. But what can you do? They also beat Fort Valley State in the semifinals. They had a first-round bye. So there was that right there. So good job to Edward Waters on winning the SIAC tournament. Then we jump on over to the Northeast Conference final. So the final for this was St. Francis of Pennsylvania, or St. Francis U, taking on LIU. Now, I actually made a prediction for this tournament, and I actually predicted St. Francis and Damon. Unfortunately, I was incorrect, as the finalists were St. Francis and LIU. And I gotta give a lot of credit to LIU. They had to start out in the opening round where they beat Merrimack in 4, then they swept Damon, which was downright impressive, and then they had to face the tournament host in St. Francis. And in the end, LIU actually wound up winning. So the first set, they never trailed, but there were 7 ties, and LIU wound up winning that first set 25-23. Second set, 12 ties, 3 lead changes, but the Sharks took that second set 25-22. Then in the third set, LIU never trailed, but there were 6 ties. But in the end, the Sharks did take that third set 25-20, sweeping St. Francis, the Red Flash, and winning the first ever NEC tournament, which is historic for LIU. And keep in mind, they were under a new head coach in Kai Doug Quem after Sean Patchell stepped down, as he is now the head coach at Downey High School in California. So for the Sharks, they were led by Livon Moreno, who had 12 kills, while Caden Satterfield had 11 kills and Luke Chandler had 10 kills. Caden Satterfield, like I said, he can be a game changer for LIU. Everyone focuses on Luke Chandler, but Satterfield is just as good. LIU hit 341 in the match, and they didn't really block the balls a whole lot, but they still outblocked their opponent 6.5-5, which is pretty good, and they outdug their opponent 30-26, as Gio Colazzo had 12 digs. So there was that for LIU. St. Francis was led by Blake Leprando, who had 11 kills, while Thomas Leahy, Trevor Lewis, and Andrew Deerdorf had 9 kills each. As a team, St. Francis hit 297, which wasn't bad. The problem was that LIU just could not win that first set, which I think was kind of the difference maker. And that second set was also fairly close as well. And I think it just took the wind out of the Red Flash's sails, as LIU just had a much better balanced attack, and sadly it just was not meant to be. And also St. Francis missed 17 serves, and they had 0 service aces, so il Rama for St. Francis. So as for the NEC all-tournament team, that was comprised of Patrick Bucciarino of Sacred Heart, Henry Moffitt of Damon, Thomas Leahy of St. Francis, Blake Leprando of St. Francis, Livon Moreno of LIU, Caden Satterfield of LIU, and the tournament MVP went to Luke Chandler of LIU. Now, I actually did have the honor of seeing Luke Chandler and Caden Satterfield back in their prep days in high school. So, good on Luke Chandler and Caden Satterfield. And for Caden Satterfield, I actually also got to see him in his junior college volleyball days, which, good on him as well. So, I think LIU is in a good place. And for them to pull off not one, but 2 upsets, because you got to remember, they started the tournament beating Merrimack in 4. They upset the number 2 seed Damon, who was my pick to go to the NEC tournament, or NEC tournament final. And then they beat the number 1 seed St. Francis at St. Francis, just because, remember, the NEC tournament finalists were going to be held, or the NEC tournament altogether was going to be held at the number 1 seed's site. So, for LIU to basically just win that whole tournament, despite having to go through Thursday's matches all the way to Friday's matches, is downright impressive. So, good job to the Sharks, and good job to Kai Doug Queen in his first season as the Sharks head coach. And it's really impressive that they were able to basically win that tournament. And they made a liar out of me. I really am eating a lot of crow about this, just because it's like, I was very surprised LIU got past Damon. Damon had themselves quite the year. They only lost to St. Francis, and they also lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, but they didn't make the NCAA tournament. But overall, for LIU, they were just very impressive, and I really am excited to see what they can do going forward. LIU finishes the season 19-11, 10-4 in conference play, while St. Francis finishes the season 15-12. They finished 11-2, which was good for number 1. Before I continue, I want to give a shout out to the live chat room on Spreaker. Adam Karnick, he said, "Have an awesome show." And Davidson Crooks popped in the chat room. He said, "What is good?" Just covering some NCAA men's volleyball. But that was basically the conference tournaments that unfortunately did not have any automatic qualifiers for the NCAA tournament. So, unfortunately for those teams that won their tournaments, they aren't going to the NCAA tournament, which sucks, but it's like, hey, at least you won some hardware. And for LMU's case, they managed to make a lot of they made some good history. And for LIU's case, they made some good history as well. And for Edward Waters, they also made history by winning their first ever SIAC tournament. So that's that for those tournaments. Now let's get on into the automatic qualifiers. So the finals for the Conference of Carolinas consisted of North Greenville, and it's actually North Greenville, not North Greenville, versus King of Tennessee. So North Greenville was the top seed as they took on King, which before we get on into the final, we actually have to go over how they got there. So, as we all know, North Greenville had a bye along with the number 2 seed Erskine. But how did King get there? King had to beat Mount Olive in 5 sets in the quarterfinals. And then in the semifinals, they defeated Erskine 3-0. They swept them. So that was quite impressive. And that 5-set win over Mount Olive was the only match that was not decided in 3 sets for the time being. But for the Conference of Carolinas final, it was quite the barn burner. I think this probably was the most exciting of the conference tournament finals, let alone the ones of the automatic qualifiers. So, the first set, King actually came out swinging. They took that first set 25-19. I'll also say this about King. They played quite a tough schedule. I mean, you look at the schedule, you're thinking 15 losses, that's quite a bit of losses, and they finished 3rd in the Conference of Carolinas. That doesn't mean anything, just because King doesn't matter for them, considering the King can play its worst volleyball in the regular season, but if they're playing their best volleyball in the conference tournament, that is all that truly matters. So King took the first set 25-19. Second set went to North Greenville 25-22. 11 ties, 8 lead changes. But in the end, the Crusaders took that second set. Third set, King took the third 25-22. 8 ties, 2 lead changes. And the fourth set was quite the wacky fourth set, as North Greenville narrowly took that fourth set 32-30. But in the fifth set, King was able to blow by the competition, just because their mascot is known as the Tornadoes. And they managed to turn the tide. Well, not turn the tide, but they managed to turn the match around as they took that fifth set 15-12, winning the Conference of Carolinas tournament. I want to say this is their first ever Conference of Carolinas tournament win, as basically big ups to Ryan Booher. I interviewed him, and he knows how good the Conference of Carolinas is, and the fact that they were the 3 seed and they managed to make it all the way from Thursday to all the way to Saturday, and they wound up winning the tournament is quite impressive. So good job to King University of Tennessee. So King was led by Warren Davis, who had 29 kills, while Jackson Carroll had 15 kills. Kellen Kennedy had 13 kills. As a team, King hit 280. They also outdug North Greenville 56-49, as Davis and Justin Sawyer each had 12 digs. AJ Drucker had 11 digs, and Jack Sornowski had 10 digs to go along with his 59 assists. They also had 6 service aces compared to North Greenville's 4, as Aaron Milstead had 4 of those service aces, which is pretty good. The Crusaders were led by Michael De La Cruz, who had 20 kills. Emmanuel Adames had 16 kills. Diego Rosic had 15 kills, and Jacob Brown had 9 kills. North Greenville hit 237, and they were outblocked by King 15-12, which in reality it's not bad, but it's still quite a bit. And like I said, they were outdug. So unfortunately for the Crusaders, they will not be defending their Conference of Carolinas title, and they will not be going to the NCAA tournament. But for King, they managed to blow by the competition, and they managed to huff and puff and blow down the conference title defense of North Greenville, as King will be advancing to the NCAA tournament. Now, jumping on over to the EIVA tournament, we had Penn State taking on Princeton in the final. Now, the EIVA tournament was rather eventful. So, in the quarterfinals, we had NJIT upsetting 3-seed Charleston, which NJIT actually wound up winning the first 2 sets. Then they lost the next 2 sets, and then they escaped with that 5th set, which sealed the upset and sent them into the quarterfinals to take on Princeton. But in the semifinals, Princeton was able to beat NJIT, which advanced them to the final, As for the other final, George Mason defeated Harvard in the other quarterfinal, and then they fell to the hands of Penn State in 4 sets, which set up Princeton versus Penn State round 3, which is also a rematch of last year's EIVA semifinal. But in this final, let's just say Penn State had a lot of revenge on their mind, and they knew what to expect with Princeton this time around. So the first 2 sets, I wouldn't say they were just one-sided, but the first set, it was kind of all Penn State. They wound up winning it 25-14. Second set went to Penn State 25-18. Third set, now I actually saw the third set in terms of the Big Ten Network, as I was actually at the Big West Conference Tournament hospitality room, and someone had the Big West, or the EIVA tournament final live stream, because shout out to the Big Ten Network for live streaming it with no paywall for free. And in that third set, Princeton was clawing and scratching their way, no pun intended, to possibly extending the match. They were, I want to say it was 22-22, if not 21-21, but unfortunately Penn State closed out the match on a 4-1 run, and eventually Penn State took that third set 25-22, clinching the match and the EIVA crown over Princeton, as Penn State was led by Cal Fisher, who had 12 kills. Brett Wildman had 8 kills. Mihal Kawal had 6 kills. As a team, Penn State hit .324. They outdug Princeton 22-19. And even though they got outblocked, they also won the serve battle, and they held Princeton to only hit 54 in terms of hitting percentage. There was not one set that Princeton hit over 100. So it was just that night for Princeton, as there was not going to be any upset this time around, as this was actually played in front of 1,203 fans, which is quite good if you ask me. The Tigers were led by Brady Wedbush, who had 7 kills. Ben Harrington had 5 kills. I'm going to try to remember his first name from when Sam Schweisky told me. Nahirowu Omine had 4 kills. As Princeton had a whopping 20 hitting errors in the match. That's not going to help you win a whole lot of matches, unfortunately. So again, it was just that type of night for Princeton, but it was not a bad season for the Tigers. As remember, Princeton had a rough start to the season. They had a rough start to the beginning of the regular season. They wound up struggling against certain teams. They lost to Damon. They lost to UCLA, Pepperdine. They lost to Ohio State twice. But then EIVA conference play came. They finished second. They even finished strong despite getting hammered by Penn State twice. They finished 7-3 in the EIVA conference, and they even beat Charleston twice. They even beat Loyola of Chicago, which eventually wound up being I wouldn't say the demise of the Ramblers, but I just think that it was just the straw. Princeton was the straw that stirred the Loyola of Chicago doom of gloom drink. But for Princeton, they really impressed me, and they finished the season 14-12. But overall, they were quite impressive this season, and the future still looks bright for the Tigers. As the EIVA all-conference team consisted of Liam French of George Mason, Alessandro Negri of NJIT, Ben Harrington of Princeton, Mihal Kawal of Penn State, Brett Wildman of Penn State, Cole Bogner of Penn State, and the EIVA Conference Tournament MVP was Cal Fisher. So that is that for the EIVA. Penn State is going to be dancing. There was no upset this time around, as Penn State is going to have their chance to send their seniors off with some hardware, not just in the EIVA, but with the NCAA tournament. Now let's jump on over to the MIVA tournament final, which consisted of Ohio State versus Ball State. No offense to Lewis and McKendree, but it was kind of destined to be the Cardinals and the Buckeyes. With Loyola of Chicago having been bounced in the quarterfinals, it was basically going to be between the Cardinals and the Buckeyes. And this was being played at the Worthens Arena in Muncie, Indiana. So the first set, Ohio State narrowly escaped with that first set. They actually led for a good chunk of that set. Ball State made a comeback, but then those Buckeyes took that first set 27-25. Second set, Ohio State rode that momentum, never trailed in that second set, and wound up winning it 25-17. The third set, Ball State woke up. Ohio State was in that set for the most part, but then after that media timeout, or after Ball State hit 15, that lead kept growing and growing and growing, and eventually Ball State wound up winning the set 25-19. But then the fourth set, Ohio State reestablished themselves. They picked themselves up off the mat, and they won the fourth set 25-19. And I hate to toot my own horn here, but I kind of predicted Ohio State to winning the MIVA tournament, just because Ohio State has been playing some darn good volleyball as of late. And personally, I really think that Ohio State is... I'm kind of hoping they're not peaking for their sake, but they're just playing so much better than they were previously, as they're on an 11-match winning streak. And remember, that 11-match winning streak started at the hands of Ball State at the Covalli Center following the sweep from Ball State against Ohio State at Worthen Arena in Muncie, Indiana. So Ohio State was led by Jacob Pastor, who had 19 kills. Shane Wetzel had 16 kills. Cole Young, 10 kills. Jack Stevens, 9 kills. And Justin Howard, 7 kills. It was just a great balanced night for Ohio State, who hit 363. They barely outdug Ball State 37-35, and they won the serve battle, though they missed a lot of serves. They missed 19 serves compared to Ball State's 11, but they did have 6 service aces, 3 of which came from Michael Wright, who also had 9 digs to go along with his 54 assists. In terms of blocks, Ball State did outblock him 8.5 to 7.5, but that offense was just blistering hot, as Jacob Pastor hit 289, Wetzel hit 333, Cole Young hit 643, which was impressive, Jack Stevens 444, Justin Howard 400. So it was just a great night for Ohio State's offense, despite getting outblocked. Meanwhile, Ball State was led by Caleb Jennis, who had 16 kills. Tanashi Davazocheva had 15 kills. If I am mispronouncing that name, I apologize, but I just call him TN, or we'll just call him TN, Tanashi N. And that was kind of it. They didn't really have that third head on that 3-headed monster, as Vanis Buckles had 6 kills. Ball State hit 275, which wasn't bad, but in that second set they hit 0. That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But other than that, Ball State had an offensively efficient night. They hit 300 or more in every set except for that second set where they just hit a goose egg of 0. Overall for Ball State, I don't think they were bad. It's just that Ohio State just showed their true potential. And honestly, it was just quite impressive that they just straight up, they put it all together when it truly mattered most. And for Ball State, it's no shame for them. They won't be going to the NCAA tournament, spoiler alert. But they still had a fantastic season. It is going to be tough to replace Caleb Jennis, as Jennis is a fantastic talent, and he is going to be missed throughout Ball State, and Cardinal Nation is definitely going to miss him, or Cardinals Nation is going to miss him. But honestly, I think Ball State's future looks bright. And Donan Cruz deserves a lot of credit for the past 2 seasons, getting them to the Final Four last year and then getting them to nearly another MIVA championship this year. So watch out for the Cardinals next year. But for the time being, Kevin Birch and the Buckeyes are bound for Virginia. So congratulations to former set point guest Kevin Birch. Moving on to the MPSF, we had UCLA taking on Stanford. Yes, UCLA taking on Stanford. Remember last week, I predicted UCLA and Stanford to make in the final. Now let's go over the MPSF final. The quarterfinals consisted of Stanford versus USC and Grand Canyon versus Pepperdine. Stanford swept USC, Stanford beat USC in 4. No, sorry, USC fans. And then Grand Canyon swept Pepperdine. So it was basically UCLA versus Grand Canyon in the semifinal, while BYU took on Stanford, which was the host of this tournament. Excuse me a second. So, in the first semifinal, UCLA swept Grand Canyon, which was not really too much of a surprise. Grand Canyon gave it their all, but unfortunately, UCLA is just too darn good. Meanwhile, Stanford, I was keeping a sharp eye on Stanford and BYU just because, even though I was watching Long Beach State and UC Irvine in their matchup, yes, spoiler alert, that was the semifinal of the Big West Conference Tournament, I was keeping an eye on that matchup because I was telling the people at the media table I picked Stanford to upset BYU. And eventually Stanford did upset BYU in 5 sets at Maples Pavilion, which was very impressive. So then the final consisted of UCLA and Stanford, and there was 1,721 in attendance, which wasn't bad. But when you compare that to Ball State's 3,153... that's not really all that great. I mean, they had more than Penn State had, or Rec Hall had, but still, whatever. It is what it is. In the MPSF final, UCLA swept Stanford 25-22, 25-21, and 25-23. Long story short, UCLA didn't have the biggest trouble. This was probably the closest in terms of what Stanford threw at UCLA this season, because UCLA swept Stanford in both of the meetings. The first meeting, it was just a thrashing. The second meeting was better, but UCLA swept them. And then this meeting, UCLA swept Stanford again, but this time it was a whole lot closer just because Stanford wanted to defend its home court, and they wanted to pull off another upset like they did last year. But just like Penn State-Princeton, there was not going to be an upset, as UCLA will be dancing, as UCLA was led by Merrick McHenry, who had 10 kills. Ethan Champlin and Ido David each had 7 kills. J.R. Norris IV and Zach Rama had 5 kills. That just goes to show that UCLA has some big-time weapons on their team. Like, it doesn't even have to be Ethan Champlin. I'm sorry, Ethan Champlin had 7 kills, and Ido David had 7 kills. If I said something else, I apologize. UCLA hit 373 as Andrew Rowan was the straw that stirred that drink offensively. He had 3 service aces and 34 assists to go along with 2 kills. So for UCLA, they were just darn right good. They outdug Stanford 25-20. They outblocked them by a whopping 10-4.5. And even though Stanford kind of won the serve battle, UCLA just had so much firepower. Stanford only had 29 kills compared to UCLA's 39, as Will Rotman led the way with 13 kills. But after that, they had 4 players with 4 kills following that. It's tough to win a game when your best player is having to carry you. And for 2 of the 4 players that had 4 kills, they either hit below 100 or they hit in the negatives. And this is not me trying to knock on Stanford, but it's like UCLA is just so darn good. Like, this just goes to show how really good that UCLA was. And for UCLA to beat Stanford on the road 3 times, it's never easy. And I have to give a shout to Brandon Johnson of Off the Block for informing me of that, because I kind of forgot that UCLA beat Stanford on the road, or they took them on both times on the road. So for UCLA to beat Stanford on the road 3 times, it's quite impressive. So there was no doubt UCLA was going to go dancing. Stanford could have been a bid stealer, but for them, they would have had to play some perfect volleyball against UCLA, and they just couldn't. But there was no shame in them, as they did all that they could. And hopefully, if this is the end hopefully this isn't the end for Will Rotman. Hopefully we will get to see him in the NVA or some sort of professional league. Because Will Rotman is a fantastic player, and that dude is him. That dude is not Will Rotman. He is Will Rot him. Just my take. Anyway, so that is that for UCLA, Stanford in the MPSF final. Now we have to get to the Big West Conference, the best for last. So I was in attendance for the Big West Conference Tournament final, and I enjoyed it. I was there for all 3 days. I attended the quarterfinal, which UC Santa Barbara beat UC San Diego in 5 sets. Very good final. I'm not going to really go over that matchup, but it was a very good final. Santa Barbara, even though they were dinged up, they advanced to the semifinals to take on the top seed Hawaii. In the other quarterfinal, we had UC Irvine sweeping CSUN. It was a rough ending for CSUN as they had won 10 in a row, but then they wound up losing their last 11 in a row. But Theo Edwards had really improved the Matadors quite well. Before I continue, I actually forgot to go over the MPSF All-Tournament team. So the All-Tournament team for the MPSF tournament was Christian Janke of Grand Canyon, Heath Hughes of BYU, Will Rotman of Stanford, Justin Louis of Stanford, Ido David of UCLA, Andrew Rowan of UCLA, and the tournament MVP was Merrick McHenry, which is darn right impressive. And that's the thing for UCLA. It's like they have so many players that are deserving of MVP. Like, you just can't pick one. Like, you gotta look really hard into consideration. So, there's that. Alright, back to Big West Conference. So, UC Irvine swept CSUN, and it was actually the first time I got to see UC Irvine, or that was the first time UC Irvine won a match with me in attendance, dating back to last season. And yeah, I know I'm skewering stats, or I'm trying to feel good about myself, but it's like, I one time said UC Irvine men's volleyball has not won a match with me in attendance, and someone gave me flack and said, yeah, get the hint, Teran. So, yeah. As Mike Pat pops in the chat room on Spreaker, he says, good evening, Teran, have a great show. Thank you, Mike. So to the Big West Conference semifinals, that consisted of Hawaii versus UC Santa Barbara and Long Beach State versus UC Irvine. Long Beach State and Hawaii each had first round byes because they were the top 2 seeds. For Hawaii, long story short, they swept UC Santa Barbara. Now, UC Santa Barbara was just beaten up so much. Like, again, one of their outside hitters had to play libero, which was Dane Chalmers. And I give Dane Chalmers a lot of credit. Like, the fact that he didn't get to play his primary position, and even he was not at 100%. Like, he had a shoulder injury or two. He, unfortunately, had to switch positions in terms of his primary position of volleyball. So now he had to play libero instead of his primary outside hitter position. And again, Santa Barbara just was not 100%, and they just had they didn't really have the best shot against a very good team such as Hawaii. And then the other semifinal, which consisted of Long Beach State and UC Irvine, was won by UC Irvine, which swept Long Beach State. Now, this was the biggest surprise of the Big West Conference Tournament, and this was almost the surprise of the entire weekend, except not really, just because UC Irvine was right there when it came to Long Beach State. Unfortunately, the previous week, Long Beach State reverse swept UC Irvine at the Bren Event Center, and David Niffen said it best. His team had been hanging tough with some of the top 5 teams. The only times they gotten swept by the top 5 teams was by Hawaii, which it's never easy to win at Stan Sheriff Center, and Long Beach State, which I think we could all agree that was probably one of their worst matches ever of the season. But for them to sweep Long Beach State is quite impressive, and David Niffen said it best. You have to sometimes have a short-term memory in terms of the week. Like, you can't remember these past matches And the fact that Long Beach State really just, they didn't look like themselves, but that was a testament to to UC Irvine being such a tough team, and David Niffen having a better game plan, and Hilir Heno having himself such a night, leading the way with 22 kills. I think it was more so UC Irvine just coming with a better game plan and just keeping Long Beach State off the service line and just serving tough on their own as well. So for UC Irvine, they really just showed their stuff against Long Beach State. And it's huge for them because that was probably their biggest win of the season. Biggest and best win of the season. So for the final of the Big West Conference Tournament, that consisted of top seed Hawaii taking on UC Irvine at the Bren Event Center. But due to Hawaii being the top seed, they were technically the home team, even though UC Irvine is the home of the Anteaters, which was them, or the Bren Event Center was the host of UC Irvine, but I digress. Anyway, the first set, Hawaii just came ready to play. Like, UC Irvine had a lead in the early single-digit stages, but then Hawaii just started flexing their muscles. They were serving tough, courtesy of Spiros Hakas and Keani Thim, and they just did not let up on the gas pedal. And also, I should mention this, on the last point of the UC Santa Barbara Hawaii match, Jakob Tele won off of a walk-off service ace, which puts him tied atop the all-time service ace leader at Hawaii. So all he needs is one more service ace, and then he will be the all-time service ace leader at Hawaii. Anyway, so for Hawaii, they took that first set 25-18 as they were just strong from the get-go as Dimitrios Mouklias. So I've been mispronouncing Dimitrios' name a lot, as his last name is not Mouchilas, it's actually Mouklias, as one of his teammates said. Mouchilas is actually his Hispanic last name. Which, again, for Hawaii fans, if I mess up on like a last name, or if I mess up on a fact, like I did way before the season started, you just gotta let me know. Just tell me in a respectful manner. Just say, hey, just so you know, this person's name is pronounced this guy, or this fact is not correct. It's actually this, and that. Anyway, so Dimitrios Mouklias and Chaz Galloway were kind of the catalyst in that first set offensively. Second set, UC Irvine kind of turned the corner as Francesco Sani was getting it together. Hilir Heno kind of shook off his slow start. And we even got to see a little bit of Cole Gillis, as Cole Gillis actually missed the first two matches of the Big West Conference Tournament with a knee injury. And someone told me that Cole Gillis could have played in the Big West Conference Tournament previously, but his knee could not take 3 days, because remember, UC Irvine did not have the luxury of a first-round bye. They had to play on Thursday, then on Friday, then on Saturday. So good on David Niffen for holding off on playing Cole Gillis. As UC Irvine won the second set 25-21, there were 11 ties and 4 lead changes, as that was actually the tightest set of the match. But the rest of the match pretty much just went to Hawaii. So the third set, Hawaii jumps out to a 4-0 lead. That eventually doubles to an 8-0 lead. And the person you all have to thank, for Hawaii fans, is Jakob Tele. He pretty much was serving up a storm. Now, unfortunately, he did not get that service ace, which put him as the all-time leader in terms of service aces. But he just really served strong. And soon he is going to get that service ace, which will put him all-time as the all-time leader of Hawaii. And it's probably going to come soon rather than later, and it has to come soon because this is his last year. He's a senior. Yes, I have that fact correct. Jakob Tele is a senior. Anyway, so in the third set, Hawaii just used that 8-0 run to start, and they took that third set 25-13. It was just domination from them as Spiros Hakas, and it's actually Hakas, not Chakas. He was strong as well. He finished with 10 digs and 9 kills. He almost had a double-double, which was quite nice. And then the fourth set, Hawaii got off to a strong start, but credit to UC Irvine. They worked their way back, and they pulled the rope, and they did not give up. And especially after that third set, most teams would have just packed it up and just waved the white flag against the number one team in the nation. But UC Irvine had some fighters, and Cole Gillis, or no, not just Cole Gillis, Hilaire Heno and Francesco Sani, as well as Cole Gillis, they were basically chomping at the bit. Joe Carlos did an excellent job leading the offense, setting the offense as well. Connor Campbell had some good blocks as well. He also had 3 kills. Eventually, UC Irvine, despite trailing a majority of that set, they actually tied it up at 21-21, and I think it was also tied up at 22-22. But then UC Irvine, unfortunately, just got outscored 3-0 as Charlie Wade said it best. The plan was to get their best servers off the service line. It's because UC Irvine really serves tough, as despite them only having 4 service aces, they only missed 13 serves compared to Hawaii's 15. And they were just serving really tough, and that's probably going to be the toughest serving team outside of maybe like UCLA or Penn State or Long Beach State that Hawaii might see all season. Eventually, UC Irvine just could not catch up to Hawaii. They just could not get that 1 point to give them the lead. As Hawaii, like I said, they wound up winning the last 3 points, and they won the match off of a joust kill courtesy of Chaz Galloway. After the game, I don't know if this is supposed to be off the record or on the record, but Joe Carlos and Chaz Galloway were talking with one another, and then Chaz said he might have netted, aka net violationed. And that could have probably been challenged. I'm pretty sure Niffin had a challenge or two. So I'm surprised Niffin did not challenge for net violation. But honestly, if he did have a challenge, why didn't he use that? But either way, Hawaii took that fourth set 25-22 in the match, as Hawaii was led by Dimitrios Mouklias, who had 17 kills. He hit 387. Chaz Galloway, 13 kills. He hit 417. Hakas had 9 kills. Cole Hoagland, he had 7 kills, no errors off of 7 swings, so he hit a perfect 1,000. As Hawaii hit 330 for the match, and they outblocked UC Irvine 17-12. Now, in the first set, UC Irvine actually outblocked Hawaii 4-1, but the blocking was just drastically improving as the match went on for Hawaii. And that's when Hawaii can sometimes be at their best, because they've got some darn good blockers, such as Cole Hoagland, who had 8 blocks. Mouklias had 6 blocks. Chaz Galloway had 6 blocks. Guilherme Voss, 7 blocks. I'm going off of block assists, by the way. But Hawaii, you get the point. Hawaii is a very good blocking team. UC Irvine was led by Hilaire Heno, who had 17 kills. Francesco Sani had 13 kills. Cole Gillis, who played the final 3 sets after missing the first set and the previous 2 matches with the knee injury, he had 5 kills. As UC Irvine only hit 160 for the match, which is a bummer. It obviously wasn't the night that UC Irvine wanted, but they gave Hawaii all that they could handle, and they really threw everything that they had at the Rainbow Warriors. Part of me really wanted the match to go 5 sets. Sorry, Hawaii fans, for saying that, but unfortunately, when you're basically just allowing runs of like 3-0, 4-0, it's going to be tough to beat a team like Hawaii. But I give lots of credit to UC Irvine. So your 5 automatic qualifiers are King, Ohio State, Penn State, UCLA, and Hawaii. So for the at-larges, they actually consist of Long Beach State and Grand Canyon. So Long Beach State, I kind of had the feeling that Long Beach State was going to be one of the at-larges, just because Alan Knipe said it best in his press conference. They had themselves a great body of work. They had themselves a great season. They didn't really lose a whole lot of matches. They only lost twice to UCLA, 1 time to Hawaii, and I think that's pretty much it. They had a great win over Penn State, and they beat Ball State, which made the final. They beat King of Tennessee, which wound up winning its conference tournament. and there were no upsets, which there were no bid stealers, which was good for Alan Knipe and his team. So Long Beach State did get one of the two automatic or two at-larges. Now for Grand Canyon, you're probably wondering, how did Grand Canyon get the at-large over UC Irvine? Now, for Grand Canyon, they actually had a better RPI than UC Irvine did. I want to say Grand Canyon was like 4th, while UC Irvine was like 9th. But for Grand Canyon, they just had a better record against teams in consideration. UC Irvine only had 2 wins against teams in consideration, which was against Long Beach State and BYU. The other teams in consideration, to my knowledge, were probably Loyola, Stanford, Ball State, and BYU. And Stanford obviously had double-digit losses, and this was actually courtesy of MPSF Bias, aka Jonathan Bates of Off the Block. They actually only had 2 wins in 13 matches over top 10 opponents, or something along those lines. Either way, at first I thought for UC Irvine they got robbed, but at the same time it's like, when you have so many opportunities where you could have probably won, it just sucks. But I will give David Niffen credit. He scheduled very tough, but unfortunately, they just could not pull off that win. So, they just could not pull off that big-time win, which could have propelled them into consideration for getting the at-large. I would have liked to have seen Long Beach State UC Irvine round 4, but it will be Grand Canyon representing for the MPSF, as this is actually Grand Canyon's first ever NCAA tournament appearance. So, big congratulations to the Lopes on being in the NCAA tournament. And you also have to remember is that Grand Canyon started off 15-0, and they did hit a rough patch where they lost to Concordia, and they lost the heartbreaking 5-setter via a reverse sweep to Pepperdine, and then they all obviously got hammered by UCLA, and then they just straight up lost to Stanford, which UC Irvine beat, but that doesn't really ultimately matter all that much. But the bottom line is that Grand Canyon just straight up, their body of work is just so much better, and sadly, it just was not meant to be for UC Irvine, as, again, courtesy of the Bello rating model, a.k.a. TJ Breshears. If I mispronounce his name, I apologize as well. If I mispronounce any of these names, I do apologize. Grand Canyon's RPI is actually 5th in the nation, while UC Irvine's is 8th. So, yeah. That is another thing you need to consider. Like, RPI, I keep forgetting that RPI is a thing. And while UC Irvine defeating Long Beach State was impressive, and making the Big West Conference Tournament final was also impressive, it's like, it just wasn't meant. You're not going to make the NCAA tournament with double-digit losses. You're not going to make the NCAA tournament by, unfortunately, losing to a bunch of teams in the top 10 or something along those lines. So, sadly, it just wasn't meant to be. And this is just another flaw for the NCAA men's volleyball tournament, where the NCAA tournament is just too small. And I want to say BYU and UC Irvine were kind of the first few out. I think UC Irvine was like the first one out. BYU also probably has the case of first one out, but it's like they lost to Stanford in the final, or in the semifinals. They split also with, UC Irvine. So, I don't know. I would kind of give the edge to UC Irvine being the first one out, but David Niffen said it best. His team is a top 5 team, whether his team makes the NCAA tournament or not. And UC Irvine was 2-11 against teams under consideration, which, again, that was against Long Beach State and BYU. So, Unfortunately for the Anteaters, the end of the season sadly just is a little gut-wrenching, and this is the true stat from MPSF Bias, a.k.a. Jonathan Bates. They had 13 matches against top 7 teams and came away with 2 wins. There you go. Alright, so that's that for the NCAA men's volleyball side of things. Let's go to the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll for this week, because yes, there is a coaches poll this week, so this is probably going to be the last one until the until the end of the season. So we'll start off from 15 through 11. So 15 through 11 consists of Charleston at 15, Princeton at 14, Loyola Chicago at 13, USC at 12, and Ball State at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Pepperdine at 10, Ohio State at 9, Stanford at 8, BYU at 7, and Grand Canyon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of UC Irvine at 5, Long Beach State at 4, Penn State at 3, UCLA at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA Men's Volleyball National Collegiate Coaches Poll is Hawaii. So, in the post-game press conference following the loss to Hawaii, David Niffen said, we have a top 5 team, or UC Irvine is a top 5 team. And I agree. I even said it in my post-game thoughts following the UC Irvine-Hawaii match. UC Irvine is a top 5 team, whether they make the NCAA tournament or not. And I totally agree. Unfortunately, they will be missing the NCAA tournament, as Grand Canyon, like I said, they get the final spot, even though they straight up got hammered by UCLA, and in one match they just straight up got swept, even though they took a set off of UCLA, even though both matches were in Arizona, so something else to consider. Ohio State is entered the top 10, and they deserve to be in the top 10, just because they have worked so hard. And remember, they were number 15 at the time. They upset then number 1 Penn State, and then they just worked their way up to the top and to the top and to the top and to the top. And look at them now. They've won 11 in a row, and now they're top 10. And I've been voting to see if they can be in the top 10. And I'm so happy that Kevin Birch and the Buckeyes are in the top 10. We have 2 Big Ten teams in the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll top 10, let alone the NCAA tournament. And now we got to go over the NCAA men's volleyball tournament bracket, then we'll head to a commercial break. So the top seed in the NCAA men's volleyball bracket is none other than, can we get one more drum roll, please? That's the best you'll get out of a drum roll. UCLA. Now the number 2 seed is, can we get one more drum roll, please? Hawaii. Foolish me, I thought Hawaii was going to be the number 1 seed, but then I forgot RPI was a thing, and UCLA has a way better RPI than Hawaii does. I was going off of head-to-head in the current AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll, but I forgot UCLA has some pretty darn good wins. They only have 2 losses, which were to Penn State and to Hawaii. And then Hawaii lost to Long Beach State, and then they lost to Penn State as well. Now, I'm going to say this, if Hawaii did not lose to Long Beach or Penn State, I think Hawaii could have been the number 1 seed. But unfortunately, they did not, and now they are basically the number 2 seed. But hey, maybe that could be motivation for Hawaii going forward. So, as for the quote-unquote number 3 seed, that goes to Penn State, as they have a bye to the quarterfinals, as they get the winner of, I'm not going to do a drum roll, Ohio State versus King. So on April 30th, we have King taking on Ohio State in Fairfax, Virginia, which is going to be Eagle Bank Arena at the campus of George Mason. So yeah, that basically kicks off the entire NCAA tournament, and the start time for that is going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time. The other quarterfinal, and this one was actually decided, and by process of elimination, the quarterfinal for the NCAA men's volleyball tournament on the other side of the bracket will be Long Beach State versus Grand Canyon. Now, this is only the second meeting between the Lopes and the Beach, as basically Long Beach State and Grand Canyon will be facing off against one another with a spot on the quarterfinals, or in the semifinals, on the line. And whoever wins this matchup will face UCLA. The problem is that UCLA has beaten Long Beach State twice this season, and they've beaten Grand Canyon 3 times this season. So I'm not gonna try and say that UCLA is going to win against whoever gets the winner of Long Beach State Grand Canyon, but it's like whoever wins in that matchup is going to have to play some darn good volleyball against UCLA in the semifinal. And then as for Ohio State King is going to be scrappy, as I want to say King also played Ohio State this year. I'm not entirely certain of that, and I don't think they did. But King has played a fairly tough schedule this season. They haven't really played the easiest schedule, but they haven't played but it's certainly not the most toughest schedule. But for King, they've played some darn good competition, and hence why they had 15 losses. And honestly, I think for King, I would not count them out, just because you can see what some of these Conference of Carolina teams can pull off. And you saw what happened with North Greenville against Princeton last year. And King played some pretty darn good competition. They played Purdue-Fort Wayne, Lewis, which was number 15 at the time. They played Loyola Chicago, which was number 12 at the time. They played Long Beach State and USC in California, which were ranked respectively. They also played Lincoln Memorial, which unfortunately did not result in them winning. I'm sorry, they didn't play Lincoln Memorial. It was someone else that played Lincoln Memorial. It was Charleston. It was Charleston that played Lincoln Memorial. I forgot about that. And then Quincy also played Lincoln Memorial. But King also played Charleston, which is a top 15 team. They also lost to Limestone, which is a pretty solid team. Then they lost to LMU on the 31st of January. And they also lost to George Mason, which credit to Ryan Booher for taking his team to George Mason, just because, for starters, that is the host site of the NCAA tournament. So Ryan Booher is making some big brain plays, and that eventually, and he even said it best to me. He said, "We schedule a tough road schedule and a tough non-conference schedule to prepare us for conference play." And he said that all the way back in the month of January when his team took on Long Beach State, which obviously Long Beach State won, but you have to give credit for King for scheduling that matchup. So for King, we'll see what happens against Ohio State. Ohio State is playing some good volleyball as of late, but don't underestimate the Tornadoes. And for the Buckeyes, if they manage to get past King, which it's no guarantee they will, but you never know, they would take on Penn State in the quarterfinals, which would give us a all Big Ten quarterfinal in the NCAA tournament. Now that's what we call growing the game of volleyball and growing the game of Big Ten volleyball. So, and then the winner of Penn State versus the winner of King Ohio State goes on to play Hawaii in the semifinals. Do I want to do a prediction right now? Probably not. I'm going to make my predictions of who's going to win the NCAA tournament after the Ohio State King matchup. I guess I'll say who's going to win the Ohio State King matchup. I'll say Ohio State wins. I'm not going to give out how many sets they win in, but I think Ohio State beats King. Nothing against Ryan Booher, but I just think that maybe Ohio State's playing their best volleyball as of late, and they're showing their true potential, and Kevin Birch is a fantastic coach, so I think Ohio State comes out on top, and we all get the whole Penn State versus Ohio State matchup, which will be the rubber match between those two teams after the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions split the two matchups with one another. So there's that right there. All right, that is going to do it for the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament bracket. We're going to take ourselves a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll have some NCAA Beach Volleyball to discuss, and then I will go over the NCAA Women's Volleyball Scrimmage that I attended between UCLA and Long Beach State at the Gold Mine. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter, at any time. Be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out our amazing shows on IE Sports Radio, such as Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick, who comes on primarily 1 hour before Set Point goes live, and Let's Whine About DMV Sports with Mike Pat. Also, I do want to say feel better to Mike Pat, as he has been battling a cold, and I know the feeling of not being 100%, so I hope you feel better, buddy, and hopefully we will see your golden-sounding voice on the air sooner rather than later. He did go live yesterday with Let's Whine About DMV Sports, but if you listen to that episode, he was sick as a dog. But with that being said, let's get on into the second half of Set Point. I just want to give a few quick shout-outs real quick. First and foremost, I do want to give a shout-out to UC Irvine for being great hosts of the Big West Conference Men's Volleyball Tournament. The Brand Event Center is a fantastic place to have the Big West Conference Men's Volleyball Tournament, and honestly, I wish we could have the tournament every single year at the Brand Event Center, but sadly that is not meant to be, as it's going to eventually get rotated around. I imagine next year might be at like Santa Barbara or CSUN or UC San Diego. Either way, it's probably going to be at a location where it's not by me, which makes me sad face, but it is what it is. I also want to give a shout-out, and I didn't really give the shout-out on Twitter, but I do want to give a big thank you to Charlie Wade for giving me a Hawaii men's volleyball coin. And it's like, I never really give a whole lot of gifts, except for like family and some sort of my friends, and Christmas and birthdays and whatnot. But I never really get any gifts outside of that sort of thing. And no one really gives Set Point any gifts. And no, I'm not asking for gifts, and don't you dare ask for my address, people, to send me gifts. Like, do not ask me for you're not going to give me presents. But the fact that Charlie Wade, the head men's volleyball coach of Hawaii, gave me a Hawaii coin, which was basically them winning the back-to-back men's volleyball, which was them winning the back-to-back NCAA men's volleyball championship. It really does mean a lot, and I'm not trying to get all sappy and emotional, but it's like, for him to do that, it obviously is just a coin. For some that make it think it's just a coin, yes, it is a coin, but it's a token of appreciation and friendship. So I really do appreciate Charlie Wade giving me that coin, that Hawaii men's volleyball coin, and it's awesome that he gave me that. So thank you, Charlie Wade. I really do appreciate the token of thanks and token of friendship that you gave me, and the men's volleyball coin. And I'm grateful to cover your team. So big mahalo to Charlie Wade. Also, I want to give a big shout out to all of the media members that I met in person, especially from Hawaii. Like, it's high time I finally got to see some of these people in person instead of meeting them on Twitter. And I'm happy y'all got to see me in person and see who I am and whatnot, instead of just seeing me on Twitter. And I'm glad I got to see you all in person as well, just because volleyball and sports in general can bring people together. And I'm happy that I got to see most of my Hawaii buddies, like Cindy Lewis and Tiff Wells. I didn't even know the two were mother and son, which is embarrassing for me. So yeah, that's kind of my most embarrassing moment right there. So I also got to see some Hawaii reporters. I can't pronounce the guy's last name, but There was one guy by the first name Jason Kaneshiro. Jason Kaneshiro. He is a sports reporter for the Honolulu Star the Honolulu Star, as he is a Star Advertiser. He's a sports reporter for the Honolulu Star Advertiser. So, yeah, great to meet you, Jason Kaneshiro, and great to meet everybody at the Big West Conference men's volleyball tournament. I even got to meet Paul Sunderland as well. And my thing is that I hope Set Point does continue to grow to the point where it's well known across the world. And meeting people, going to big time matches, going to big time tournaments like that is basically a step in the right direction. Now, obviously, it's a small step, but it's still a big step. It's still eventually going to be a big step just because eventually I'm going to know more of these people. And I'm hoping I can take the next biggest step next year, as next year is going to be huge because next year the NCAA men's volleyball tournament is going to be hosted in Long Beach, which, fun fact, it's my stomping grounds. So I really wanted to see if I can get a credential to that as well. But for now, I will take the precautionary measures to making sure Set Point is well known across the world. And Set Point is pretty much well known all over the entire, not just Twitterverse, but well known all over the world. And I'm going to do all I can to be objective and not like mean or not like disrespectful or anything of that sort. So there's that right there. Also, thank you to everyone that followed along the Twitterverse when it came to me. When it came to my updates on Twitter. Obviously, everyone can't be there, but if you were there in person and didn't get a chance to meet me, you'll get a chance to meet me soon. If you did follow along on Twitter, I do appreciate your support. I do appreciate everybody for basically just following along for the ride and basically just seeing how much work I put in. Obviously, it's just me with an iPhone, just filming clips and just tweeting out stuff and quoting Ira Thor. But honestly, someone's got to live tweet all this whole thing out, just because there has to be a reporter that can basically give out consistent updates to the best of their ability. And I also want to give a shout to the Bren Event Center, just because they have the best Wi-Fi I've seen in a while. No disrespect to every other facility that has good Wi-Fi, but it's like, I think the Bren Event Center has the best Wi-Fi out there. Even when it was like super crowded in the Bren Event Center between Hawaii and UC Irvine, which had a whopping 4,064 people. I expected it felt like a whole lot more. It felt like there was like 5,000, maybe 10,000 in attendance. But honestly, even though the Bren Event Center was crowded with lots of people, the Wi-Fi was just so clear-cut, and I could tweet things out so clearly, even with my video clips. So, shout out to the Bren Event Center Wi-Fi. And one more shout-out I do want to give, a couple more shout-outs I want to give out to is, first of all, Stacy King, the SID for UC Irvine, for allowing me to attend the Big West Conference men's volleyball tournament. I really do appreciate you letting me attend, and you are the best. And thank you for letting me attend all the other UC Irvine men's and women's volleyball matches this season. Unfortunately, the men's and women's volleyball season at UC Irvine has come to an end, but I can't wait for next season where I get to see the Anteaters do their thing, and I'm already looking forward to women's season. And one last thing I do want to give a shout-out is, I want to give a shout-out to those that basically said I asked some really darn good questions. Well, first of all, I will also say this. I try not to ask long-winded questions, so if my questions were long-winded and y'all didn't get a chance to ask your question, I apologize. But I will also say this. Thank you to those that do tell me that I asked some really good questions. A couple people did say I asked some good questions, and it's like, that means a lot. Like, I try not to ask easy questions, that's for sure. And even David Niffen said that was probably the most. It was some sort of question. It was the first or second question of the following the Big West Conference men's volleyball final, and he said that was the most direct and loose question I've ever seen, or something along those lines. I'll have to give you all the clip of that, but thank you to everyone that complimented me on the questions that I asked. It really does mean a lot, and I appreciate y'all giving me the compliments. And I tried to ask the best questions that I can, and I promise y'all I'll do better when it comes to shortening my questions. It's just that sometimes I get anxiety when I see the coach or players, and that's I start to freeze up and whatnot. But that's just that's just a natural part of me being unnatural. But I digress on that part. So, again, thank you to everyone for all the compliments, for all the kind words, and especially for those that liked my questions. It really means a lot, and I'm trying to do the best when it comes to this whole journalism/reporter thing. So, you all have my dear thanks and gratitude. Anyway, let's get on to some NCAA beach volleyball, as there was quite a bit of NCAA beach volleyball that happened, mainly on the West Coast, as UCLA earlier in the week, they took down LMU, Loyola Marymount, and USC. I want to say it was on Thursday, as UCLA beach volleyball is now the new number one team in the nation, as, well, you saw what they did in the Center of Effort Challenge. They beat TCU, and they also beat USC in the final. So, great stuff right there. They beat, like I said, they beat number 3 USC and number 5 LMU, which was quite nice. And that was basically the conclusion of their regular season, as they won on Thursday. Those wins came on Thursday, which I'm not too surprised, because I think UCLA is playing some darn good volleyball, and it was at their place. So that's some good momentum as they enter the Pac-12 Tournament, which is going to be held at Stanford, I want to say. Yes, it is going to be held at Stanford on April 26th through the 28th, and I think it's going to be quite fun, if you ask me, just because, well, I think for starters, UCLA is definitely in contention to winning that, but USC is also pretty darn good as well. I mean, USC obviously just did not have it against UCLA, but you never know what they could bring the next time around. And then you can't sleep on Stanford as well. Stanford has been pretty solid as well. Arizona is pretty good. And then you also just can't sleep on Washington. I just think Washington is also pretty solid as well. So, for the Pac-12, my thing is that who's going to be the at-larges that make it? Let's say UCLA wins the tournament. Does USC is going to get an at-large. Stanford's probably going to get an at-large. And then I think, but is that pretty much it? I don't think Washington is going to get an at-large. Unless, of course, they manage to pull off some big-time wins and they make the tournament really interesting. But overall, for the Pac-12, it's I think only 3 teams can probably get into the Big West Conference or the NCAA beach volleyball tournament. But we'll see what happens come that time, as I really think that UCLA is playing some darn good volleyball as of late, and they should be the top seed of the tournament, just because, again, they're the number 1 seed, and nothing's really slowing them down in terms of who is in their way. And I think they really got, this is going to sound cliche, but I really think they have their swagger back and they have their momentum, as the top seed of the tournament is none other than UCLA. 2 seed is USC, as they take on Arizona. And then UCLA plays the winner of Utah-Oregon, who the loser gets put into the contenders bracket. Then the 3 seed is Cal, which is having a pretty good season. 4 seed is Stanford. 5 seed is Washington, 6 seed is Arizona State, and then the 7 seed is Arizona, and then 8 and 9 seed is Utah, Oregon, respectively. So for UCLA, I pretty much expect them to be in the final, at the very least. Like, if it's not USC, UCLA in the Pac-12 Tournament final, I will be very surprised. But we'll see what happens come that time. There was a conference tournament that did happen in NCAA beach volleyball, which was the Big West Conference Tournament. And I know I kind of give too much credit to the Big West, but it's like, that did happen last week. And honestly, it was quite incredible of what happened in that tournament, as Long Beach State actually, for the first time in what seems like forever, they beat Hawaii in the winner's bracket semifinals, or the winner's bracket finals, as they advanced to the Big West Conference finals. As Hawaii got dropped into the contenders bracket, they beat UC Davis, but then Hawaii actually wound up losing to Cal Poly in the contenders bracket final, which was very surprising. I did not expect Hawaii losing to Cal Poly, because Hawaii, I think at the time, was top 10 in the nation. Just because, again, when I do set point, it's like I don't really have the opportunity to go over the top 10 on that specific date. But when it came down to it, I will say this, Cal Poly did come up clutch against Hawaii. And for Long Beach State, Hawaii was number 8 in the nation. So for them to have lost to Long Beach State, I mean, Long Beach State was overdue for a big-time win, especially against Hawaii. I don't even remember the last time they beat Hawaii prior to this. It probably was in the infancy days of NCAA beach volleyball, which at the time it wasn't even called NCAA beach volleyball. Anyway, and then Cal Poly, which wasn't even ranked, upset Hawaii in the contenders bracket final, which meant that the final consisted of Long Beach State and Cal Poly in the Big West Conference Tournament final in beach volleyball. And in the end, Long Beach State broke through, and they wound up winning the duel 4-1. They clinched the duel already, but they just had to play on just because, well, for starters, you have to continue on with the pairs, and it's like, it's tradition. Unless, I think only NCAA tournament allows you to finish early, or certain matches or certain tournaments allow you to finish early. But for Long Beach State, they finally got the big break that they deserved, as they lost so many tough matches in close fashion. They even had a few close losses to Hawaii. Again, and if I remember correctly, they played in the Big West, the Big West Challenge up at Cal Poly, and then they played Hawaii. They were undefeated in that challenge before they played Hawaii, and they actually had to forfeit one of their matches because one of their players got injured in the match, and that was already 1 point for Hawaii. So for Long Beach State, they had been snake-bitten in terms of the entirety of their season. They had a bunch of close losses and a bunch of great efforts, but unfortunately they just could not get that one big breakout win or that one big break. But now they did get this one big break, as they are now dancing. And it's quite incredible that Long Beach State is basically in the NCAA tournament. Currently at the time, they are number 11. I expect them to go upward into the top 10 of the AVCA AVCA Beach Volleyball Coaches Poll. I'm certain they won't overtake Stanford, but with Hawaii losing to Cal Poly and Long Beach State, I think Hawaii falls out. Sorry, Hawaii fans. And then Long Beach State moves into the top 10. So for Long Beach State, they get that big break they finally deserved. So good for the Beach, good for Mike Campbell's team, and also a shout out to the AVCA pair of the week being Malia Gemintara and Taylor Hagana, I think that's how it's pronounced, for being the AVCA / college beach volleyball pair of the week. And they have 33 individual wins apiece, which is a single-season school record at Long Beach State. So good job to Jim and Tara and Haganah for that accomplishment and for the weekly honor. So that's that for some NCAA beach volleyball. I also do want to give a shout-out. We're going to jump to some NAIA, so a brief little NAIA beach volleyball talk, as I want to give a shout to Vanguard University for beating Corbin in the NAIA beach volleyball final 3-1. And just like that, Vanguard, which won the NAIA men's volleyball championship last week, also, or 2 weeks ago, they managed to win the NAIA beach volleyball championship. So Vanguard is starting to become Volleyball U in terms of, well, volleyball, in terms of the NAIA. So good job to Vanguard on getting the win, and they actually avenged an earlier loss to Corbin. So Vanguard is representing for not only just the small schools, but for the California schools as well. So good job to the Lady Lions, as their AVCA NAIA All-Americans were Conley Harris and Morgan Nash. And then for Corbin, Avery Ridgway and Megan Dennis represented for them on the AVCA NAIA Beach Volleyball All-American team. So all in all, that was pretty much that for the NAIA beach volleyball sort of thing. I didn't really want to go into too much effort, or too much detail into that, just because we are nearly 100 minutes into this thing. As I want to go over one last thing, and then I'll send you on your way. As Saturday, before I covered the Big West Conference men's volleyball championship, I actually went to the campus of Long Beach State to cover some NCAA women's volleyball, which was a scrimmage between Long Beach State and UCLA. Now, for UCLA, this was actually their second scrimmage against a team not named themselves, as they actually played Bakersfield previously before taking on the Beach. The Beach had actually played in a tournament, I think at San Diego State, against teams like San Diego, and then they also played USC, and then San Diego State. So for Long Beach, they kind of had a little bit of experience, or not experience, they had some spring matches underneath their belts, and they also got to play their alumni match, which is cool, I guess. So for Long Beach, here they kind of were pretty much, I wouldn't say they were ready to go, but they were pretty much ready. For UCLA, here's the thing for them. They did not have their full team. They were without Anna Dodson. They actually were without their transfer middle blocker from Northwestern, who I'm blanking on her name. I even told Alfie Reft of this name, but I'm blanking on the name. It's either way, UCLA was shorthanded, and they did not have their full team, which was quite the bummer for them, which I would have liked to see them at full strength, but we'll get to see them eventually soon at full strength. The transfer's name was Desiree Becker. So they didn't have Desiree Becker, they didn't have Anna Dodson, who was sick. I don't know what happened with Desiree Becker, but I can confirm that Desiree Becker is officially transferred to UCLA from Northwestern. That was courtesy of Elena Sklar, who was affiliated with Six Rotations, but I don't know if she is anymore. But either way, Desiree Becker is a UCLA Bruin, and that's huge for the Bruins. As, like I said, Desiree Becker was 5th on Northwestern in kills with 177. She hit 349, and she had 118 blocks, which was first on the team. So that's huge for UCLA, and for them to have that middle blocker duo between her and Anna Dodson, that's huge. But they did not have them at the time. So UCLA had to actually borrow one of Long Beach State's middle blockers. They had to borrow Rihanna Sheffy. I want to say that's her name. Either way, they had to borrow a couple of Long Beach State's middle blockers throughout the scrimmage, which it is what it is. I mean, it's just a scrimmage. Like, as long as they don't have to convert their middle blockers or their outside or opposites to middle blockers, it's all good in the hood. But for Long Beach, they didn't really have their full team, as they had a few of their transfer players out. They haven't quite really cleared it yet. And then they haven't quite cleared the clearance quite yet. And then they also had one of their beach volleyball players, Jalen Jordan, or one of their players who also plays beach, Jalen Jordan. She wasn't with the team. So it was Rianne Sheffy. Yeah, Rianne Sheffy was one of the middle blockers that got to play for UCLA. And Katie Kennedy also got to play for UCLA as well. So I didn't really get to take down too many stats, but I will say this. It was quite the entertaining scrimmage. It was very entertaining for a scrimmage. I did actually take down service errors, even though I kind of lost track of who had how many service errors. But either way, the first set, UCLA wound up winning that first set 34-32, and it's like, my goodness, that was quite the first set for it being a scrimmage. And it's like, if that's how the scrimmage is going to be, it's like, I can't wait to see what the actual matchup is going to be. Now, the second set, Long Beach State kind of reestablished themselves. They won that second set 25-21. Then in the third set, UCLA just really took it to the beach. They won that 25-15. And then in the fourth set, Katie Kennedy went over to UCLA. And then eventually, Long Beach State, despite not having Katie Kennedy, they wound up winning that fourth set 25-21. And the two did not agree to play a fifth set, and it's for good reason. So it's just a scrimmage. Like, we're not going to die if we don't get a fifth set between Long Beach State and UCLA. So that was pretty much the scrimmage between Long Beach State and UCLA. It was very entertaining. Again, I did not take any stats. There were quite a number of missed serves, mainly in the first set. And it was very entertaining. And I got to see some players from Long Beach and UCLA that I didn't even know about. Well, I did know about one player, Carly Hendrickson, who actually had the set-clinching block in set one. And she's pretty impressive. I think she can make an impact with UCLA. She transferred from Florida, and she's going to help out Grace Olson quite well. So for UCLA, I actually caught up with their head men's volleyball coach, Alfie Reft, their new head men's volleyball coach, Alfie Reft, following the team's scrimmage. And if I accidentally mispronounced Alfie's first name, I apologize. I was kind of dehydrated at the time. But here's my post-scrimmage interview with Alfie Reft, UCLA women's volleyball coach. All right, this is Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with UCLA women's volleyball coach Alfie Reft following the UCLA Long Beach State women's volleyball scrimmage. All right, Alfie, your team just wrapped up the scrimmage. What were some things you liked about the scrimmage?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, like, it's just good for us to play against somebody else, actually, outside of our own gym. So some good opportunities for our players to see a different opponent. They force us to work on some things that we don't see every day in our training facilities. So I think it's always good when we're just playing against someone else.
Is this the first scrimmage you've had against another opponent, or have you faced other opponents outside of yourselves?
Second scrimmage we had. So we played Cal State Bakersfield last week, and this is our second outing of the spring. So.
Any players we should all keep an eye out for coming this fall that we didn't see today?
Yeah, got a number, but Anna Dodson was one of our middles that wasn't here today, and so she's holding the fort down in the middle, and she's certainly formidable. Wasn't out competing today, out with a little bit of sickness, so that's one I would say.
Now, for the players that were here, we got to see Grace Olson, got to see Carly Hendrickson, who had the set
clinching kill in the first set, or set clinching block. What can you say about the players that stood out today?
Yeah, I thought all our pins did a nice job. Amon, Carly, Grace, Sheridan, they're all, developing at a rapid pace, and so some good swings, good arms out today. I thought all 4 of them played exceptionally well.
And you being in your first year, taking over the legendary Mike Seeley and having come from the University of San Diego, what's it going to take to get UCLA back into the postseason in your first year?
Yeah, I think just consistent work like we're doing and, building slowly. It takes time for greatness to come, and so just staying patient, but doing the work every day like we're doing.
Coach, thank you for your time, and good luck in the fall.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, that was my post-scrimmage interview with UCLA women's volleyball coach Alfie Reft following the scrimmage against Long Beach State. So he did mention a few names, obviously Grace Olson, which I kind of also mentioned, Carly Hendrickson. He mentioned Iman Njai, who is returning as, unfortunately for UCLA, Charity Looper transferred to Louisville, which is a tough loss for the Bruins just because Charity, I think, is and was their catalyst for the Bruins in what was a very tough year, and she even battled injury. And I'll just go on the record and say, if Charity Looper was not injured in some of the matches that UCLA lost in, I think UCLA kind of gets into that NCAA tournament. But unfortunately, it is what it is. We're just going to have to call it what it is. One player that he also mentioned was Sheridan Leverett, who is going to be a sophomore next year. She was a freshman this year, and she is an outside hitter / opposite, so that's someone to keep an eye out for. And like he also said, Anna Dodson is coming back for her senior year. She actually was slated to be in the transfer portal, but then she made the decision to come back to UCLA, and that was a good decision on her part, in my opinion. All right, so I actually also caught up with Grace Olson, the UCLA women's volleyball player at UCLA, who, following the UCLA Long Beach State women's volleyball scrimmage. So here's my post-game interview with Grace Olson of UCLA.
All right, this is Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with Grace Olson of UCLA women's volleyball following the UCLA Long Beach State women's volleyball scrimmage. All right, Grace, you just wrapped up the scrimmage, your second scrimmage against an opponent not named UCLA. What did you like about this scrimmage, and how does it feel to face competition not named UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun to just come out here and compete. Obviously, Long Beach State is a really good team, and I felt like we were able to hold our own. Like, we have a lot of different pieces that we've been working on. I know, like, out-of-system setting is, like, a huge thing that we're trying to work on, and I think we did really well today, like, working on that. I know service has to be a little bit better, but it's always good playing a team that's not UCLA. Like, we get a new, just competition level.
He had some key pieces missing, like Anna Dodson, just to name one. How are you all able to be resilient without players like her and Desiree Becker and a few others?
Yeah, I mean, Anna's been like such a key player for us, especially in practice. And I know she's been sick the last week, so this is our first game like without her. But I'm just glad that the Long Beach State middles were able to come in and help us. And I'm just really excited for the fall when both Des come and Anna. Like we'll be a lot better with them for sure.
Tell us about Audrey Pack and how she was able to set the offense perfectly for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of Audrey. Like she's coming into her senior year, and she's going to be like such a big piece for us. And she's just setting amazing. And like it kind of, last year she didn't get to play a lot, and the year before that, but now she's just come into this role as a leader on the team, and she's just executing so well.
And then you being in your second year after you got all Pac-12 freshman honors, like what's it going to take to help UCLA get back into the postseason after barely missing it last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we had a coaching change, and I know we all trust every single coach that's on our staff right now, and like they're helping us so much, and we've already gotten 10 times better from last year. So I think I'm confident that we will go far, and I know everyone has like the belief and attitude and motivation to do that.
Grace, thank you for your time, and good luck in the fall.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was my post-scrimmage interview with Grace Olson of UCLA women's volleyball. So yeah, for UCLA, it's going to be a little bit of a year where they try to reestablish their identity, where obviously new head coach, a little bit of a new coaching staff, and just trying to pick up the pieces and trying to pick up where Mike Seeley left off. And Grace Olson did, like I said, she got Pac-12 all-freshman honors, and that's huge just because UCLA is going to need to have some of their young guns step up, like her and Sheridan and Iman Njai, even though she's not a young gun, she's kind of a veteran player. Anna Dodson, obviously, is going to be stepping up big. She got all Pac-12 honors. Desiree Becker, she has some leadership from Northwestern. She's going to be big time for the Bruins this year. And I feel UCLA can make the NCAA tournament this year. As long as they stay healthy, as long as they limit the losses, and as long as they take care of their side, I think they're in good shape. Now, the Pac-12 is obviously an unknown beast, but we'll get there once the season starts. Now, on the Long Beach State side of things, I actually caught up with Long Beach State women's volleyball coach Tyler Hildebrand following the scrimmage, as he actually, I don't know if I cut this part out, but he actually saw my iPhone case, and yeah, he liked it. Yeah, I didn't cut out the first part of him complimenting my iPhone case, which is actually a Game Boy. But anyway, here's the interview with Tyler Hildebrand.
All right, this is Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with Long Beach State women's volleyball coach Tyler Hildebrand following the Long Beach State-UCLA women's volleyball scrimmage. All right, Tyler, you just wrapped up the scrimmage. What did you like about the scrimmage against a good team such as UCLA?
This is our last chance to compete in the fall or in the spring, and we've been trying to build to play like we practice. So getting in a match against an opponent and getting used to that, and play how we trained, and I thought we did a good job of that. We obviously had chances to win that first set and kind of made some weird weird mistakes. But as far as passing the ball, running the offense we're trying to run, playing hard, serving well, those are all things that have been focuses for us in the spring, and I thought we did that today.
Now, we obviously know some of the players that are returning, like Zaina Meyer, who unfortunately did not get to play, like Katie Kennedy, Savannah Chacon. Who are some other players that are going to be returning or that are coming in?
Yeah, we didn't graduate too many. We just graduated Callie, Dillon, and Tori. So you'll see mostly the same roster, the same players you saw last year. Obviously, you saw Hannah Lisiak from Northwestern played great today. Elisa Gee from Oregon played great today. We have Grace O'Reilly, who's still 17, a senior in high school that came early. Sarah Vellucci is libero, same senior in high school, came early. So those are 4 newcomers, and we have 6 coming, or 7 coming in the fall. So Natalie Glenn will be back, who's playing beach right now. Abby Carrick from Utah will be joining us. She plays outside. Jada Harris from Vegas will be coming. Talia Lee from Utah will be coming. Elle Amagor from Arizona will be coming. And Livy, who was with us a little bit in the fall, but she played beach. She'll be joining. So, we're going to be adding depth and adding good players. And some of those newcomers that I listed are, I think, going to be impact players for us.
Now, it's a little early to ask this, but will you be possibly scheduling UCLA, or is that a way too early question to ask?
Yeah, it's not out yet, but we're playing them week 2, so we're going to be hosting them this week 2, and I think we'll return there in 24. Obviously, Alfie and Amir are great friends of mine, and we think it's good for Southern California for us to compete where our fans can go easily up the 405, and their fans and friends and family and everyone can come down the 405 to us. So we'll be playing them week 2.
The rivalry has been rekindled. Coach, thank you for your time, and good luck in the fall.
Thanks, Tim.
So we got a little bit of a schedule leak right there, as Long Beach State and UCLA will be facing one another this season after not facing one another last season, which was kind of a rarity. It just felt a little weird not seeing UCLA and Long Beach State lock horns with one another. But we will get to see both those teams at full strength. And Yeah, Natalie Glenn's the one that plays beach volleyball, not Jalen Jordan. So that was my bad when I said Jalen Jordan and not Natalie Glenn. So my apologies. Tyler Hildebrand did mention one player, and that was Hannah Lesiak, who got to play this week, or in the scrimmage, as I actually caught up with her following the scrimmage and what it's been like playing for Long Beach State and for Tyler Hildebrand.
All right, this is Teran Rodriguez of Set Point with Long Beach State women's volleyball player Hannah Lesiak following the Long Beach State-UCLA women's volleyball scrimmage. All right, Hannah, your team just wrapped up the scrimmage, the last scrimmage of the spring. What did you like about this scrimmage, and how did it feel playing a team like UCLA?
Yeah, I think having UCLA in our gym was a really good matchup. I think there are a lot of things that we're focusing on this spring, all across the nation. I think a lot of programs are dialing in on exactly what makes their system. And I think for us, really, it's kind of this win, lose, draw type deal where we want to make sure that even if we win or lose, that we're implementing the things that fall into our system. So I think that was something that we really worked on today. So just individual details that we're focusing on as hitters and stuff like that, and then also just competing with confidence on our side and not allowing kind of chaos on the other side or, a lack of confidence to affect our play.
And obviously you coming from Northwestern to Long Beach, how are you liking the transition from the Big Ten over to the Big West and from Illinois all the way over to Southern California?
Yeah, I'm really loving it. I think, to be honest, the biggest difference is kind of the type of volleyball that's being played. So I think the Big Ten is associated with kind of this power and kind of like aggressiveness and almost like, I guess just like size of players too. So when you come over here, it's a little bit different, kind of the style of play. So one thing that I've noticed is just hitters being scrappier and kind of more creative with their shots, and that's kind of one thing that we focus on too, is just like learning how to create on, offsets or something like that. So yeah, I think the style of play is a little bit different, but I'm really enjoying it because I feel like I have many more like tools on my belt, if that makes sense.
Got it. And what's it like being coached by Tyler Hildebrand?
I think being coached by Tyler has been absolutely freeing. I think he really emphasizes that he wants us to just be freed up and be athletes and kind of trust our training in the process. So he's been really good about like building our confidence and allowing us to not play with so much anxiety all the time.
Hannah, thank you. Good luck in the fall.
Thank you very much.
So that was my post-scrimmage interview with Hannah Lesiak, Northwestern player. So I did not know of this scrimmage as, yeah, that's a big-time addition for Long Beach State, and it's another Big Ten player that has actually come from the Big Ten over to Long Beach State, as Callie Schwarzenbach was the one that came over from Nebraska over to the beach. As her numbers were actually big, as she actually finished second in Northwestern in kills with 297, and she was third in digs with 244. So that's a huge addition, as Morgan Chacon actually transferred from Long Beach State back to Florida State and is playing beach volleyball as of late. So Long Beach State adds a big weapon to their arsenal, and heaven knows what that's going to be like for the beach. And Tyler obviously mentioned one player from Elise Aggie, who transferred from Oregon, and then Abby Carrick transferred from Utah, and then they're going to get most of their players back, some of their players that are playing beach back once beach volleyball season is over. But now it's going to be an extended beach volleyball season because Long Beach State is in the NCAA beach volleyball tournament. So there's that. But on that note, I enjoyed the scrimmage, and I can't wait to see what Long Beach State and UCLA have to offer. Also, one more note, I actually did find out from Stacey King herself, the Big West Conference Women's Volleyball Tournament is actually going to be held at Long Beach State. So that's kind of your news leak right there. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It's time to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. And if you listen in the wee hours of the morning, I really do appreciate you. Shout out to the live chat room that popped in when they could. Adam Karnick, Marcus Losgreat, Mike Pat, and Davidson Crooks. I really do appreciate everybody that tuned in. Stay tuned for some NCAA, for some Set Point content to come. Stay tuned for some Set Point articles as they will be posted on the NBA website soon. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action. And remember, Sunday starts the NCAA Men's Volleyball Tournament with Ohio State and King. Good night.